shadows and spreadsheets, Olivia Reed straightened her simple navy blazer before entering the gleaming glass fortress of Vertex Innovations. 6 years at the company, and she still felt like an imposter walking through those automatic doors. The morning sun glinted off the sleek architecture as she nodded politely to the security guard. "Morning, Thomas," she said, clutching her coffee cup like a shield. "Ms. Reed," he replied with unusual formality, and Olivia noticed his eyes dart briefly to something behind her. She turned to find Harrison Wells, CEO and founder of Vertex, striding through the lobby. Even at 7:30 a.m., he looked impeccable in his tailored charcoal suit. His presence commanded attention without effort, dark eyes focused straight ahead, seemingly oblivious to everyone around him, including her. Always including her. Olivia pressed, herself against the wall, following the unspoken rule of making yourself invisible when the CEO passed by. Harrison Wells had a reputation for being brilliant, but ruthlessly efficient. A man who had built a technology empire through sheer will and uncompromising standards. Office whispers claimed he'd once fired an executive for speaking over a junior employee in a meeting. Others said he worked 18-hour days and expected the same from everyone else. As he passed, something peculiar happened. His stride faltered, just for a millisecond, and his eyes flickered briefly toward her. For the briefest moment, Olivia thought she saw something soften in his expression before it returned to its usual mask of cool professionalism. "Good morning," he said, the deep voice startling her. Good morning, Mr. Wells," she stammered, certain this was the first time he'd directly addressed her in years. He nodded once and continued toward the executive elevator, leaving Olivia bewildered in his wake. "He knows your name," whispered Jenna from accounting, appearing beside her with wide eyes. "Harrison Wells actually knows who you are." "Don't be ridiculous," Olivia replied, stepping into the regular employee elevator. "He probably just has one of those memory tricks for faces." "In the 4 years I've worked here, I've never heard him greet anyone below VP level," Jenna insisted. "Trust me, that was weird." Olivia dismissed the comment as she settled at her desk in the financial analytics department. Her role involved identifying investment opportunities and optimizing company resources. Important work, but nowhere near the executive radar. She'd been passed over for promotion twice, yet somehow never quite minded. Her position afforded her a comfortable invisibility that suited her. By mid-morning, she was deep into quarterly projections when her department head, Director Patel, appeared at her cubicle. "Olivia, there's been a change. You're being assigned to the Meridian Project." She blinked in surprise. "The Meridian Project? But that's our biggest acquisition target. Surely someone more senior." "The request came from upstairs," Director Patel said, a curious expression on his face. "Apparently someone noticed your analysis on the Westbrook portfolio and was impressed." "Upstairs as in executive floor." He handed her a folder. "You'll be reporting directly to Blake Hamilton, but apparently your name was specifically requested for the team." Throughout the day, Olivia found herself distracted by this unexpected development. The Meridian Project was career-making work. She scrolled through her previous reports, wondering what could have possibly caught executive attention. At 6 o'clock, when most colleagues were leaving, she remained, meticulously preparing for her new assignment. The office gradually emptied until only the cleaning staff and a few determined workaholics remained. As she finally gathered her things to leave, the elevator opened on her floor, unusual at this hour. Harrison Wells stepped out, his tie loosened, slightly in the only concession to the late hour. He seemed surprised to see someone still working. "Ms. Reed," he acknowledged. "Still here?" "Just preparing for the Meridian Project," she replied, wondering why the CEO was on her floor. Something, that might have been approval, flickered across his face. "Don't stay too late. The work will be there tomorrow." As he walked away, she noticed him stop at her desk. Glancing briefly at her organized workspace, before continuing to whatever after-hours meeting had brought him down here. Olivia couldn't shake the feeling that something was changing, like shadows, shifting when you weren't looking directly at them. She just couldn't figure out why the most powerful man in the building suddenly seemed to see her. Subtle symphonies. The Meridian Project transformed Olivia's routine completely. Her days now consisted of strategy meetings, financial models, and endless cups of coffee as Vertex positioned itself to acquire one of their largest competitors. 2 weeks in, she still couldn't shake the feeling that her assignment to this prestigious team was somehow unusual. "I don't get it," said Dominic, her closest work friend, as they shared lunch in the company cafe. "You skip over 3 levels of management to join this team, and you're not even questioning it?" Olivia picked at her salad. "Trust me, I've questioned it. But Director Patel just says my analytical approach was specifically requested." "By whom, though?" Dominic leaned forward, lowering his voice. "People are talking, Liv." "About what?" she asked, suddenly uncomfortable. "About why the most junior analyst in financial planning got tapped for the company's biggest acquisition in years. About why you sometimes get copied on emails meant for senior management." He raised an eyebrow. "About why Harrison Wells knows your name." Olivia felt her cheeks warm. "That's ridiculous. He probably just remembered me from some report." "Davaba, man runs a $4 billion company. He doesn't read reports from junior analysts." Dominic gave her a pointed look. "Unless there's a reason." Before she could respond, Blake Hamilton, the project lead, approached their table. "Olivia, we need you upstairs. The Meridian team moved up their disclosure timeline, and we're regrouping in the executive boardroom." Dominic's eyes widened slightly as Olivia gathered her things. She tried to ignore the whispers that followed her across the cafe. The executive floor was another world, all glass, steel, and hushed conversations. Olivia stepped into the boardroom, where several VPs and directors were already seated. A space had been left open near the middle of the table, with financial projections she recognized as her own displayed on the screen. "Ms. Reed, please." Harrison gestured to the empty seat. "We were just discussing your analysis of Meridian's Asian market expansion." All eyes turned to her, including those of Vertex's notoriously critical CFO, Eleanor Wright, who regarded Olivia with undisguised skepticism. "Perhaps you could walk us through your findings," Harrison continued, his tone even but expectant. Taking a deep breath, Olivia began explaining her analysis, gaining confidence as she spoke. When Eleanor interrupted with a sharp question about her methodology, Olivia responded with careful precision. "That's exactly why we need to reconsider our valuation," she concluded. "Meridian's market penetration in Singapore appears strong on paper, but their retention metrics suggest fundamental weaknesses we could leverage in negotiations." A silence followed before Harrison nodded slightly. "Ms. Wright, I believe that addresses your concern about overpayment." Eleanor's lips thinned, but she nodded reluctantly. As the meeting continued, Olivia couldn't help noticing how Harrison consistently brought the conversation back to points she'd raised in her reports she'd assumed had disappeared into the corporate void. He never directly praised her work, yet he seemed to have memorized her conclusions, defending them against executive scrutiny with unwavering confidence. After the meeting, Olivia gathered her materials, still processing what had happened. "Your insights were valuable today," Harrison said, suddenly beside her. Everyone else had filed out, leaving them momentarily alone. "Thank you, Mr. Wells," she replied, "though I'm still not entirely sure why I'm on this team." Something flickered behind his eyes. Amusement, perhaps? "You don't think you belong here?" "Honestly, no. There are dozens of more qualified people. Yet none of them identified the discrepancy in Meridian's Southeast Asian retention rates." He closed his portfolio. "You see patterns others miss, Ms. Reed. It's a rare quality." Before she could respond, Blake called for Harrison from the doorway, and the moment passed. Over the following weeks, Olivia noticed more peculiarities. Her security clearance was quietly upgraded, giving her access to executive-level data. A senior office that had been vacant for months was assigned to her due to space constraints. When budget cuts eliminated the training program she'd applied for, a specialized version was mysteriously created and offered solely to her department. Most telling were the meeting schedules. Somehow, Harrison seemed to attend every presentation, where she was speaking, yet was conspicuously absent when she was merely an attendee. Once, when a VP had harshly criticized her findings, Harrison had entered the room moments later, redirecting the conversation so skillfully that the VP ended up apologizing for his hasty judgment. "It's like having an invisible guardian angel," Dominic remarked after witnessing one such intervention. "Except your guardian angel controls the company's stock price." Olivia dismissed his comments, but privately she began to wonder. The coincidences were becoming too frequent to ignore. One evening, working late, she decided to review the Meridian project's history. Scrolling through early emails, she discovered something startling. Her name had been added to the team roster before her Westbrook analysis had even been submitted. Whatever had impressed the executive team couldn't have been that report. As she dug deeper, she found older references, notes from performance reviews she'd never seen, comments on presentations she'd given years ago when she was fresh out of college. Someone had been tracking her career progression with meticulous attention. The office was nearly empty when she finally looked up from her computer. Through the glass walls, she could see light still shining from the CEO's office. At the end of the hall, Harrison stood at his window, silhouette outlined against the city lights, seemingly lost in thought. As if sensing her gaze, he turned slightly. Their eyes met across the distance, and for a moment, the professional facade seemed to slip. There was something in his expression, something raw and unguarded, that made Olivia's breath catch. Then his assistant appeared at his door, and the moment shattered. Harrison turned away, once again the untouchable CEO. Olivia gathered her things slowly, mind racing. For years, she'd believed herself invisible at Vertex. Now she was beginning to suspect that someone, perhaps the most unlikely someone, had been seeing her all along. Paper walls? The Meridian acquisition was approaching its final stages when disaster struck. Olivia was presenting financial projections to the board when Blake Hamilton burst into the room, face ashen. "There's been a leak," he announced. "Bloomberg just published details of our offer structure." The room erupted in chaos. Harrison remained eerily calm, rising slowly from his seat at the head of the table. "Who had access to the complete package?" he asked, his voice cutting through the noise. Eleanor Wright, the CFO, consulted her tablet. 23 people, including everyone in this room. Harrison's gaze swept across the faces before him. "Find the source, now!" The next 48 hours were a blur of emergency meetings and damage control. Meridian's stock jumped 12% on the news, potentially, costing Vertex millions in the acquisition. Worse, their competitors began circling, sensing vulnerability. Security interviews were conducted with everyone who had access to the confidential information. When Olivia's turn came, she found herself in a small conference room with Harrison, himself, rather than the security team she'd expected. "This is unusual," she remarked, trying to mask her nervousness. "I'm handling key interviews personally." He gestured for her to sit. "You understand why?" The implication stung. "You think I leaked the information?" "I think," he said carefully, "that you've risen quickly, gained unusual access, and might have been an attractive target for someone looking to obtain information." "You're suggesting I was manipulated?" She felt heat rising in her cheeks. "That I'm too naive to recognize when I'm being used." Something flashed in his eyes. Frustration, perhaps. "That's not what I said." "But it's what you meant." Olivia straightened in her chair. For the record, I didn't leak anything. I've worked too hard to throw away my career for a momentary payout. Harrison studied her for a long moment. I believe you. Just like that? Just like that. He closed the folder before him. But someone did leak our offer, and until we find out who, this acquisition is in jeopardy. What do you need from me? Olivia asked. Your help. The words seemed to surprise him as much as her. You notice things others don't. You understand the financial structures better than most of the senior team. It was the most direct compliment he'd ever given her. What are you suggesting? Work with me. Directly. We need to restructure the entire offer within the next 72 hours, and I need someone who can see the patterns beneath the numbers. That evening, found Olivia in Harrison's private office, surrounded by financial models and acquisition data. The space was surprisingly austere. No family photos, no personal touches beyond a single abstract painting that dominated one wall. As they worked through the night, the formal barriers between them gradually thinned. Harrison removed his suit, jacket, then his tie. Olivia kicked off her heels under the table. They ordered takeout and ate while debating valuation methodologies. You're wrong about the depreciation schedule, she said, surprising herself with her boldness. Their manufacturing equipment is overvalued by at least 30%. Instead of the rebuke she half expected, Harrison looked thoughtful. Show me. She walked him through her analysis, pointing out inconsistencies in Meridian's financial reporting. Harrison listened intently, occasionally asking sharp questions that pushed her thinking further. Remarkable, he said finally. Most people would have missed that entirely. Most people don't spend Saturday nights reading depreciation tables for fun, she joked. Harrison's lips curved slightly, the closest thing to a smile she'd ever seen from him. What do you do for actual fun, Ms. Reed? The personal question caught her off guard. I restore vintage furniture, nothing exciting. That requires patience, attention to detail, seeing value where others don't. His eyes held hers for a moment too long. It suits you. Something shifted in the air between them, a recognition, perhaps, that they were no longer simply CEO and analyst. Olivia felt suddenly aware of how close they were sitting, of the late hour, of the city lights glimmering beyond the windows. Harrison seemed to realize it too, abruptly standing to retrieve more documents from his desk. When he returned, the professional mask was firmly back in place. They worked through the weekend, rebuilding the acquisition strategy from the ground up. By Monday morning, they had crafted a new approach that accounted for the leaked information while still preserving Vertex's advantage. As the sun rose over the city skyline, Harrison called an emergency board meeting. Olivia sat at his right, hand as he presented their revised strategy, deferring to her expertise on several key points. The board members exchanged surprised glances, but no one dared question his judgment. When the vote came, it was unanimous. The acquisition would proceed with their new framework. Excellent work, everyone, Harrison concluded. Ms. Reed and I will oversee the implementation personally. As the board members filed out, Eleanor Wright lingered. Quite the meteoric rise, she remarked to Olivia, voice laced with suspicion. One might wonder what inspired such confidence from our usually cautious CEO. Before Olivia could respond, Harrison appeared beside her. Excellence inspires confidence, Eleanor. You of all people should understand that. The CFO retreated, leaving them alone in the boardroom. Thank you, Olivia said quietly. You didn't have to defend me. Yes, I did. His voice was unexpectedly gentle. The company politics can be brutal. I should have prepared you better for the scrutiny. Why me? The question that had been burning inside her for weeks finally escaped. Why did you bring me into all this? Harrison looked at her for a long moment, something unreadable in his expression. Because you're brilliant at what you do. Because You deserve the opportunity. It was a perfect corporate answer, yet something in his tone suggested there was more he wasn't saying. The investigation into the leak continued, but with the new strategy in place, the crisis atmosphere gradually dissipated. Olivia found herself in a strange, new position, still technically a junior analyst, yet now working directly with the CEO on their most significant acquisition. The paper walls of corporate hierarchy that had once seemed so impenetrable had somehow become transparent, at least for her. And through those transparent walls, she was beginning to see Harrison Wells not just as the intimidating CEO, but as a man, complex, guarded, and perhaps carrying secrets of his own. What she couldn't yet determine was whether this new proximity was merely professional opportunity, or if the undercurrent she occasionally felt between them signified something deeper. Then came the email that would force them both to confront that very question. Crossroads and Confessions. The email arrived on a Wednesday morning, its innocuous subject line, "Opportunity for discussion," belying its significance. Olivia opened it while preparing for her daily briefing with Harrison, coffee cooling beside her keyboard. The message was from Valence Technologies, Vertex's most formidable competitor on the West Coast. They were offering her a position as Director of Strategic Finance, a leap of 3 management levels from her current role, with double her salary and equity options that made her eyes widen. Olivia stared at the screen, pulse quickening. This was the career advancement she'd worked toward for years. Yet now that it was before her, she felt strangely conflicted. "Everything all right?" she startled, minimizing the email as Harrison appeared in her doorway. In the weeks since the leak crisis, they'd settled into a comfortable working rhythm. The once intimidating CEO now regularly stopped by her office, sometimes to discuss the acquisition, sometimes just to continue a conversation from earlier. "Fine," she said quickly. "Just reviewing the Meridian integration timeline." Harrison's gaze lingered on her face, as if detecting the lie, but he didn't press. "The legal team needs clarification on the asset transfer structure. Do you have time this afternoon?" "Of course." He nodded and turned to leave, then paused. "Olivia?" It was the first time he'd used her first name. "Yes?" "Whatever it is." He gestured vaguely toward her computer. "I hope it's good news." The unexpected perceptiveness left her momentarily speechless. By the time she found her voice, he was already gone. Throughout the day, the job offer lingered in her thoughts. Valence wanted an answer within the week. They were offering relocation to San Francisco, a comprehensive benefits package, and a role that would put her on a direct path to executive leadership. It was everything she'd once wanted. So why did the thought of accepting fill her with a strange sense of loss? That evening, she confided in Dominic over drinks at their favorite bar near the office. "Are you insane?" he exclaimed after she explained her hesitation. "This is a dream offer. What possible reason could you have to stay?" Olivia traced the condensation on her glass. "The Meridian acquisition isn't complete yet. I feel responsible for seeing it through. Corporate loyalty is admirable, but Vertex will survive. Without you." Dominic studied her face. "Unless there's another reason you're reluctant to leave." "Like what?" "Like the fact that you and our enigmatic CEO have become surprisingly close." Olivia felt heat rise to her cheeks. "It's purely professional." "Is it?" Dominic raised an eyebrow. "Because from the outside, it looks like Harrison Wells has taken a very personal interest in your career." "That's ridiculous," she protested. But even as she said it, she thought of all the small moments that didn't quite fit the standard professional relationship. The way Harrison sometimes looked at her when he thought she wasn't aware. How he remembered details about her life she'd mentioned only in passing. His unexpected protectiveness when others questioned her abilities. "Whatever's happening between you two," Dominic said gently. You need to figure it out before you make this decision. The next morning, Olivia requested a private meeting with Harrison. They met in his office as evening settled over the city, the space bathed in the golden light of sunset. "I've received a job offer," she said without preamble. "Director of Strategic Finance at Valence Technologies." Harrison went very still, his expression unreadable. "I see. They want an answer by Monday." He turned toward the window, hands clasped behind his back. "It's an excellent opportunity. Congratulations." His neutral response was not what she'd expected. "You think I should take it?" "What do you want me to say, Olivia?" There was an edge to his voice she'd never heard before. "That Vertex can't match the title or compensation? That's true. That you'd be foolish to turn it down? Also probably true. I'm asking what you think," she pressed. Harrison was silent for so long that she thought he might not answer. When he finally turned back to her, his expression had softened. "I think you would excel at Valence, as you have here." He paused. "I also think we would miss your contributions tremendously." "We?" The word hung between them. Something flickered in his eyes. Vulnerability, perhaps, or resignation. "I would miss your contributions." It wasn't enough. After weeks of ambiguity, of reading between lines and interpreting silences, Olivia needed clarity. "Why did you really bring me onto the Meridian team?" she asked. "And don't tell me it was just because of my analysis skills." Harrison exhaled slowly. "You're right. It wasn't just that." "Then what?" He moved to his desk, opening a drawer to withdraw a folder. "3 years ago, you presented a quarterly analysis to the department heads. You were new, nervous, but your insights were remarkable." He handed her the folder. Inside were copies of reports she'd written years ago, annotated in his precise handwriting. "You've been tracking my work since then?" she asked, stunned. "I recognized something in you, an analytical mind that saw patterns others missed. Yes, but also an integrity that's rare in this industry." His voice grew quieter. "I wanted to ensure your talents weren't overlooked." "So you've been what? Secretly managing my career from afar?" "Not managing, protecting, creating opportunities." Olivia thought of all the coincidental promotions, the projects that had come her way, the obstacles that had mysteriously disappeared. "Why not just tell me? Mentor me openly?" Harrison ran a hand through his hair, a surprisingly human gesture from the usually composed CEO. "I considered it, but I worried my position would create complications." "What complications?" The tension in the room shifted, charged with unspoken things. "Harrison," she said softly, using his first name for the first time. "Why have you really been watching over my career all these years?" He met her gaze directly, his professional mask finally dropping completely. "Because from the moment I saw you challenge conventional wisdom in that first presentation, I haven't been able to stop thinking about you. Because your success became as important to me as my own. Because I—" He stopped abruptly. "Because—" "You what?" she whispered. The silence stretched between them, filled with years of unspoken feelings and professional boundaries neither had dared to cross. "It doesn't matter now," he said finally. "Valence is offering you an extraordinary opportunity, one you've earned through your own merit. I won't stand in your way." Olivia felt a surge of frustration. "So that's it? After years of secretly supporting my career, you're just going to let me leave? What would you have me do?" His voice rose slightly. "Use my position to keep you here? That would be an abuse of power?" "I'm not asking you to keep me here as my boss," she said. "I'm asking if you have a reason, a personal reason, why I should stay." Harrison stepped closer, close enough that she could see the conflict raging behind his eyes. For a moment, she thought he might finally bridge the gap between them. Instead, he stepped back. "I can't answer that for you, Olivia. This has to be your decision based on what's best for your future, not on anything else. The professional wall slammed back into place, leaving Olivia more confused than ever. She gathered her things slowly, hoping he might say more, but Harrison had retreated behind his desk, the CEO mask firmly back in place. "I'll let you know. My decision by Monday," she said finally, moving toward the door. "Olivia?" His voice stopped her. "Whatever you decide, I wish you every success." The formality of his words felt like a dismissal. As she walked back to her office to collect her belongings, Olivia felt a strange mix of disappointment and clarity. Harrison Wells had all but admitted to years of silent devotion, of carefully orchestrating opportunities from the shadows, of caring for her career and perhaps for her. Yet when confronted directly, he had retreated behind professional boundaries. The question now was whether she would accept the safety of distance that Valance offered, or stay and force them both to confront what lay beneath the surface of their carefully maintained professional relationship. The weekend stretched before her, filled with possibility and uncertainty. Unveiled hearts, San Francisco gleamed in the photos Valance had sent. A modern office overlooking the Bay Bridge, a sleek company apartment for her first 6 months, an organizational chart with her name already inserted in the executive tier. The contract sat on Olivia's kitchen table, unsigned, as rain pattered against her windows. Sunday night, and still no decision. She'd spent the weekend in a state of restless contemplation, weighing logical factors, career advancement, financial, security, professional growth, against something far less quantifiable, the pull she felt toward Vertex, toward the unfinished acquisition, toward Harrison. Her phone buzzed with a text from Dominic. "Decided yet? Clock's ticking, superstar." She didn't respond. How could she explain that what should be a straightforward career decision had somehow become entangled with emotions she barely understood? Harrison hadn't contacted her since their conversation. His silence spoke volumes, yet left everything important unsaid. Monday morning arrived with dreary skies and a sense of finality. Olivia dressed carefully in a charcoal suit that had always given her confidence, the Valance contract tucked into her briefcase. She'd make her decision by noon, she promised herself. No more procrastination. The office was unusually quiet when she arrived. Most of the acquisition team was in meetings with Meridian representatives, finalizing integration details. Her inbox contained the usual flood of emails, including a reminder about her decision deadline from Valance's HR director. At 10 o'clock, she received an unexpected message from Harrison's assistant. "Mr. Wells requests your presence in conference room at 11 a.m. Curious, Olivia made her way to the small conference room at the appointed time. It was empty except for Harrison, who stood looking out the window at the rain-slicked city below. "You wanted to see me?" she asked, closing the door behind her. He turned, and she was struck by how tired he looked, as if he too had spent the weekend wrestling with unseen demons. "I received word that Valance increased their offer," he said without preamble. "Director level with a fast track to VP. Olivia tensed. "You've been monitoring my communications?" "No," he said quickly. "Industry channels. News travels fast when companies poach talent." She set her briefcase on the table. "I haven't accepted yet." "But you will." It wasn't a question. "I don't know." She met his gaze directly. "I'm still waiting for a compelling reason to stay." Something shifted in Harrison's expression, resolve perhaps or surrender. He reached into his jacket and withdrew an envelope, placing it carefully on the table between them. "What's this?" she asked. "My resignation as CEO of Vertex Innovations." Shock rendered her momentarily speechless. "What? Why would you—" "The board will announce it this afternoon. Eleanor Wright will serve as interim CEO while they conduct a search for my replacement." "Harrison, this makes no sense. You built this company. Why would you leave now?" He moved closer, his voice low and intense. Because as long as I'm your CEO, there are lines we can't cross. Ethical boundaries that protect you, but also keep us trapped in roles that have become insufficient. Understanding dawned slowly. You're resigning so that you won't be my boss anymore. I'm resigning because it's the only honorable way to tell you what I should have said years ago. He took a deep breath. Stay, Olivia. Not for Vertex. Not for your career. For me. The directness of his words after so much careful distance left her breathless. You can't sacrifice your company? I'm not sacrificing anything that matters. Harrison closed the distance between them. For years, I've watched you from afar, creating opportunities but never allowing myself to be honest about why. I told myself it was for your benefit, that acknowledging my feelings would only complicate your career. Perhaps that was true, or perhaps I was simply a coward. Why now? She whispered. Because losing you to Valence made me realize that protecting your career meant nothing if it meant watching you walk away. His eyes held hers, all pretense finally gone. I've been half alive for years, Olivia, hiding behind corporate walls, telling myself that success was enough. Then you challenged everything I thought I knew, and suddenly spreadsheets and acquisitions seemed hollow without you to share them with. Olivia felt tears prick at her corners of her eyes. You should have told me sooner. Would it have made a difference? Would you have believed that my interest in you was genuine, not just a powerful man using his position to manipulate a subordinate? The question struck at the heart of her own doubts. I don't know, but you should have given me the chance to decide for myself. You're right. His voice softened. I thought I was protecting you, but perhaps I was protecting myself from the possibility of rejection. It was easier to admire you from a distance than risk learning you didn't feel the same. And what if I don't? She challenged, needing to understand the stakes fully. What if I take the Valence offer? Will you still resign? Yes. His answer came without hesitation. My decision isn't conditional on yours. I've already submitted the paperwork. The magnitude of his gesture overwhelmed her. Harrison Wells, walking away from the empire he'd built, dismantling the power structure that had kept them apart, all on the chance that she might choose him. You once asked why I brought you onto the Meridian team, he continued. The truth is, I'd been looking for a way to work with you directly for years, to finally know you beyond observations and reports. When the opportunity arose, I took it, telling myself it was for the company's benefit. But it was selfish, Olivia. I wanted to be near you. And the leak? She asked. The crisis that forced us to work together day and night? A flicker of guilt crossed his face. I didn't cause it, if that's what you're asking. But I will admit to being grateful for it. Those nights working side by side, seeing your brilliance up close, watching you challenge me without fear, they were the most alive I've felt in years. Olivia's mind raced, reevaluating every interaction through this new lens. The silent protections, the career opportunities, the way he'd defended her against criticism, all of it pointing to a truth she'd sensed, but never fully acknowledged. I don't expect an answer now, Harrison said, stepping back slightly. You have a significant offer from Valence to consider. All I ask is that you make your decision with complete information. He gestured to the resignation letter. As of 5 o'clock today, I will no longer be CEO of Vertex. Whatever you decide, that won't change. The enormity of his sacrifice left her momentarily speechless. Harrison Wells had built Vertex from nothing, had been its visionary leader for over a decade. To walk away from it all, why would you give up everything you've worked for? She asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Because none of it matters if I can't be honest about what I truly want. He reached out, hesitantly touching her hand. And what I want, what I've wanted for years, is you, Olivia. Not as an employee, not as a protege, but as an equal. As someone I can finally tell how remarkable I think you are, how your mind challenges me. how seeing you each day has been the brightest part of my life. The touch of his hand sent warmth spiraling through her. All the tension, the confusion, the uncertainty of the past months seemed to crystallize into perfect clarity. "I don't need to wait until 5 o'clock," she said softly. "What do you mean?" Olivia reached into her briefcase and withdrew the Valence contract, tearing it deliberately in half. "I'm not going to San Francisco." Hope flickered in Harrison's eyes. "Because of the acquisition?" "Because I've spent the last 6 months falling in love with a man I thought was untouchable." The admission felt like stepping off a cliff, exhilarating and terrifying all at once. A man who saw value in me when I couldn't see it in myself, who created opportunities instead of obstacles, who respected me enough to resign from his own company rather than compromise my career. Harrison's expression transformed, years of careful restraint giving way to undisguised joy. "Olivia, I don't want you to resign," she continued. "Vertex needs you, but I understand why you felt you had to." "The board won't accept a withdrawal," he said, "and truthfully, I don't want them to. 10 years is long enough. It's time for something new." "Something new," she repeated, moving closer. "Like what?" "Like finally asking you to dinner without worrying about corporate ethics policies." His smile was transformative, erasing the stern CEO she'd first known. "Like building something together if you'll have me." Dinner sounds like a reasonable start. Olivia felt a smile spreading across her face. "Though after years of secret, devotion, I think you owe me more than just a meal." "Name it," he said simply. "Anything. No more secrets. No more silent protection. From now on, we face everything together, as equals." Harrison nodded, his expression solemn. "I promise." Outside the conference room, rain had given way to sunlight breaking through clouds. The metaphor wasn't lost on either of them as Harrison, finally, after years of careful distance, leaned down to kiss her. In that moment, all the corporate hierarchies, all the professional boundaries that had kept them apart, seemed to dissolve. There was only this truth. Behind the stern CEO facade had been a man whose heart had belonged to her all along, waiting only for the courage to reveal itself. Later that afternoon, as news of Harrison's resignation spread through Vertex, Olivia sat in her office, fielding shocked messages from colleagues. None were more surprised than Dominic, who burst through her door with wide eyes. "Tell me you didn't turn down Valence. Because Wells is leaving?" he demanded. "The timing is insane." Olivia smiled, a private, knowing smile. "Let's just say I discovered something more valuable than a director title." "Which is?" Through her office window, she could see Harrison in the atrium below, shaking hands with board members as the formal announcement concluded. As if sensing her gaze, he looked up, their eyes meeting across the distance. No more hiding, no more pretending, just the promise of a future neither had dared to imagine. "The truth," she said simply. "Sometimes it's worth more than all the promotions in the world."